What's going on, Colts Nation? I appreciate you joining me for another video where today I want to go over press conferences. I wanted to go over some of the things that there are a lot of players, okay? You have Jonathan Taylor, Kenny Moore, Latu, Ryan Kelly, Zaire Franklin, DeForest Buckner, Michael Pittman Jr., Coach, AR. Like, there's so many that have happened. I want to get some of this information out to you guys because I thought there was a lot of good stuff that these guys were coming into this season talking about. So with Jonathan Taylor, there's really nothing notable there. Got asked the same questions he's been asked all offseason, right? Oh, how do you think it's going to be with you and AR? How excited are you to play with AR? How is it to finally be able to get some work in the offseason after not doing it last year? All the same stuff we've already heard. Kenny Moore had a 9-minute press conference, a couple of things coming out of his. And the first thing being that he's trying to step up as more of a vocal leader, with him being one of the oldest guys on the defense, which is what you would expect as time goes on. He's always been more of a lead by example, just head down, trying to do his work kind of guy. But now he's trying to step up, be the kind of leader the defense is going to need, especially in the secondary. Okay, and then having AR as a day one starter for second year brings peace to the team and the city. That's what Kenny Moore said, and couldn't agree more, right? Being able to have the same quarterback 2 years in a row is really nice. No drama here for Colts fans this offseason, which is great. Okay, but then moving on here, Latu was next, had a 7-minute press conference, and just one of the things that he had talked about was that he worked with Von Miller, Cam Jordan, and Max Crosby at the SAC Summit. It's a good sign that some of the greats are directly taking him under their wing, right? Crosby even had Latu on his podcast, okay? And there were a lot of guys that Von Miller, Cam Jordan, Max Crosby, they like ran the SAC Summit, so like, yeah, he's gonna work with them, but like Latu, like a lot of different guys were working together and whatnot. Latu was working directly with Von Miller, Cam Jordan, Max Crosby, like a lot of the time, picking their brains, talking with them a lot. He continued to mention those guys, so it feels like Latu did a lot of work with them, which is great news. Those are some of the best at their position and have been for a long time. Okay, and then Zaire Franklin also had a 7-minute press conference, and there was an emphasis on winning the division and making the playoffs, which is great. That's what you want to hear, the leader, one of the leaders of your team, talking about somebody who's an absolute dog, talking about, hey, we got to be able to come out and win the division this time. So that's great news. Then he talked about him and AR and how they have a certain kind of bond where they can hold each other accountable and push each other as leaders of the team, right? And you have the quarterback, and then you have the quarterback of the defense, which is the middle linebacker. Two guys that are going at war all the time. And you know, Zaire Franklin loves to talk. And, you know, AR, he's a quiet guy, keeps his voice under wraps, doesn't say a whole lot, but I feel like he's at least the kind of guy, the kind of competitor. He's gonna say some stuff back. He's gonna go at him, through words and on the field through his play. So those two, right? Iron sharpens iron. I expect the offense and the defense to have to get really competitive during training camp, and I expect these guys to get heated and to make each other better at the end of the day. Okay, then later on, the reporter said, quote, "You have the same quarterback 2 years in a row." That's where Zaire replied with, quote, "Ain't that a blessing?" With a big smile on his face. So everybody on the team kind of echoing the same sentiment. It's nice to have the same quarterback going in to this season as last. Okay, but then next up here is going to be Ryan Kelly, who had a 4-minute press conference and echoes the continuity and the importance of it, and how important it is to have, the same coaching for a couple of years, the same quarterback, a lot of the same guys coming back, and echoes how important it is to have that mesh of guys coming back. Also mentioned how having AR will make it different than operating the offense with Minshew, which you would expect. Okay, but then another thing he talked about was that the Colts front office made it clear that they weren't doing an early extension for Ryan Kelly. And he said, quote, "We made it clear that we wanted to stay, and they made it clear that it wasn't a priority for them." And it's kind of what's to be expected, right? And the question is, after this season, will Ryan Kelly stay, or will they give the center job to Tanner Bortolini? And if Ryan Kelly stays and obviously Big Q being here, what will that mean for Tanner Bolini? Does he just continue to wait? Does he play right guard? Does something happen to Will Fries? What would they do? Who knows? But right now, next year is up in the air for Ryan Kelly being an Indianapolis Colt. Somebody that we know is going to be here for a little longer is going to be DeForest Buckner, who had a 6.5 minute press conference and said all of the right things, as you would expect, right? A seasoned veteran in the league, and everything he talks about, he's just saying all the right things, right? One of the things he talked about was mentioned how the pressure rate for the unit wasn't as good as it should have been, despite the sack numbers, which is what I've been trying to say. It's what the numbers suggest. Yeah, 53 sacks is cool. I believe that was the number. 53 sacks is great, but they had like 11% or 11.24% pressure rate, right? That's just not going to be good enough. And DeForest Buckner's echoing that sentiment, which I love. And he was asked about what he's chasing at this point in his career. His quote was, "More legacy." He had another quote saying, "Getting to the playoffs and going for a ring. I got so close before." So obviously, when it comes down to it, he's trying to chase that ring, right? He came from San Francisco, where San Francisco has had a lot of success ever since he's been here, right? It hasn't been that way here for us. We've been very up and down, very inconsistent. We haven't been making the playoffs, haven't been winning our division. San Francisco's been dominating over there, so I'm sure he feels some of that. That weighs in on him, and is like, man, went to a Super Bowl, haven't had the chance again ever since I got traded. So hopefully, that's one of the guys I want us to do really good for. I want us to be great so that we can get DeForest Buckner to where he deserves to be. He's a great human. He was doing great things with San Francisco, and it just hasn't been that way ever since he came here. So hopefully we can make something happen for him. And then another quote he said, "Anthony learns to slide every once in a while, and we'll be good." And obviously jokingly saying this, but also a veteran guy that wants to see a dynamic quarterback like Anthony Richardson stay healthy. So, a little truth in everything, right? But just wanting him to stay on the field. He's talking about how he wants everybody to be able to stay on the field and to have their best shot because the guys that they need to stay healthy, right? That's true for any team. So hopefully we can make that happen this year. Not only for Anthony Richardson, for everybody, especially all the young guys that were drafted last year and were hurt last year. Okay, with him, Michael Pittman Jr. And some notes from his. It was only 6 minutes, but we pulled quite a bit here. He said that more people than were reported were at the pre-camp workouts in Cali. All the tight ends were there. I'm sure there was a lot more, but apparently there were a lot of names that we saw were there, but apparently there was even more guys there, and they all just weren't reported on. Okay, but he also mentioned that he wants to get more touchdowns to be regarded as the next tier of wide receivers and wants more respect for what he has done. So, and he talked about the tiers. He has tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and it's like 1,400 yards, 1,200 yards, 1,000 yards, and he wants to be able to tier up, right? Get 1,200 yards, get more touchdowns. That's what he's looking for this year, and early on in training camp, that's what it seems like, is that rapport with the quarterback is coming together this year, and that he should have another really big season. And then he was also preaching consistency and talking about being better in the red zone, which is something that'll help him get more touchdowns, right? Something that Mike Evans has done his whole career. Be really good in the red zone. He gets his yards, but he's also great in the red zone, so he gets a lot of touchdowns also. And then going forward in this press conference, Ballard had mentioned how good and underrated Jim Bob Cooter is. And then Pitt went out of his way, like Guy asked about something completely different, but went out of his way to talk about how good and meticulous Jim Bob Cooter is. And it sounds like we should feel lucky to have both Shane Steichen and Jim Bob Cooter available for us, and to have them on the team. A lot of glowing reviews right now about Jim Bob Cooter coming out. Hopefully we don't lose him to head coaching from what it sounds like, especially if the offense continues to be very good, right? 20-plus points every single game. If we're able to do that, then I want to keep Steichen and Jim Bob together as long as humanly possible. Okay, that takes care of the day one pressers. When you move on to the second day pressers from Thursday after the first practice, You get Coach, who had a 6-minute press conference, and he says a lot in a little bit of time. But he talked about how comfortable AR looks and how quick he's making his decisions, which is great news. He had a quote said, "How we practice is how we make us." So going forward, that's what he's looking at. It's like how you perform in practice and what you perform in practice, the competitiveness, the effort, right? The good habits, those are the things that'll show up on Sundays, right? Which is kind of a life thing, right? Like I think a lot of times about something I was told, like you spend so much time, or something that I read in a book said that you spend so much time at work that like you should perform good habits at work that you transition into your normal life, because at the end of the day, being at work, like that's part of our life. The habits that we create there work into our normal life. You put that towards the football players, their practice is their work, and then game time, that's where you see it show up for them. So that's what he's talking about. How we practice is how we make us, is what Coach had to say there. But then he said that he wants to practice with intensity and speed, which is why practices aren't as long as other teams, right? They're about 1 hour practices. Some of the practices coming up are going to be longer, going to be an hour and a half, but they have shorter practices because he wants it to be more intense, have more speed, more competitiveness, and wants to obviously keep the players fresh. If they're not on the field, they can't get hurt, or at least less likely to get injured doing whatever. Okay, now he also went on to praise the work ethic of Anthony Richardson and his ability to get through practice and to look the way he does right now. And then as this went on, talking about AR, he said, quote, "To have both these guys in the backfield will be critical for our success." Now, obviously, Jonathan Taylor is a part of that as well. But then finish with the quote that I feel like a lot of us have heard by now. Quote, "Are you going to limit Steph Curry from shooting three-pointers?" And that's what he was talking about with Anthony Richardson, and his running ability. Like, are you just going to not run Anthony Richardson? Like, it's one of the things that makes him special. So, having Anthony Richardson and his rushing ability is what we drafted him for, and he's going to continue to do exactly that. It's not going to be all the time. But he will do it. Anthony Richardson, coming into this year, says, quote, "It feels more smooth." When he was asked about how this year feels compared to last year at this time, he also said, quote, "My legs have always been one of my strengths," and talked about like it's what he does, it's what he can do, and it's how he brings value to the team, and he's exactly right. And he also went on to mention that he knows he needs to be smart, and know when to get extra yards and know when to get down and when to not take those hits. So the fact that he's aware of that is all you want, right? A little self-awareness goes a long way. If he's self-aware about it and he can work on it, right? Watch film about Lamar. That's what I'll keep saying. Just watch Lamar film and figure it out. Okay, now the last note here from AR, he was asked about when he had to take time at OTAs. Has that happened at all the rest of this offseason? And he said that, the last day of OTAs was the only time that he felt the fatigue in his arm. Chris Ballard even said that, like, the day before, he threw roughly 100 passes. And that was a lot, right? He mentioned how he started, Anthony Richardson talked about how he started throwing earlier than he was supposed to, and he was putting a lot of work in up to the point of where he felt the fatigue in his arm. So it's just about taking it easy, and taking some of the workload off of him, which I'm sure the team asked him to do for a little while after that too, right? Let the elbow come down, let it be okay, then you can start to ramp back up again. Okay, so as we move on here, we have EJ Speed with the 4-minute press conference. Said that he's actually excited to watch the offense. Said that he's not going to be sitting on the bench very much this year because he wants to see the offense, and how fun it's going to be to watch, which is impressive, right? He's able to see this day to day. He's saying this offense is going to be so crazy. I'm going to be there watching it directly on the sideline. And then it said, quote, "Shane came in comfortable day one." And he was asked about, how has Coach been this season compared to last? Does he seem more comfortable? And that's when he said, quote, "Shane came in comfortable on day one." and spoke toward how the team has more trust for Coach going into year two. They know what he is, they know what he's about, and they love him and they respect him. So that's great news. And then moving on, another defensive guy here, 5.5 minute press conference. Kwity Paye said, or he did an incredible amount of work. I can't remember everything he said that he did, but it was just all the stuff that he was listing off, right? Working out 4 or 5 times a day, doing extra cardio in the morning, working out west with Coach Ed and doing everything that he was doing this offseason and putting in all the work. And then obviously with Latu getting drafted, you imagine that he put in even more work. He talks about how he lost 15 pounds but put on more muscle after that, and says that Aaron Donald, and something that Aaron Donald said was part of his motivation for that. And part of that weight loss was because he felt that last year, like, he could feel his weight as he was playing. He could feel his weight, and he couldn't do as much as he wanted to be able to do. So he lost some weight so that he can be more explosive and have better bend coming in this year, more flexibility, things like that. And then he also went on to talk about the rookie Latu, talked about how intentional Latu has been in learning everything he can from all the vets in the room, which is exactly what you want, right? A young guy with all the talent in the world, just come in, see what you can pick up from any of these guys. Okay, but then A.D. Mitchell, to close things out here, is the last press conference we'll go over today. I know the coordinators had their press conferences. We're going to talk about those soon. I'll get those in a video for you guys. But for right now, A.D. Mitchell's press conference, the last one we'll talk about today, said that he's leaning on the veteran players, which is what you would expect. AD coming in, everything about him just screams workhorse. Guys just trying to be great, which is great news. Specifically leaning on Pitt to get up to speed on how to be a dog in the NFL. And he also, like, there was that pre-workout, that pre-camp that has been talked about. All the receivers, tight ends, everybody went to out in Cali with Michael Pittman Jr. Well, before that happened, A.D. Mitchell was just chilling, and he ended up calling Pitt, told him that he wanted to go to Cali and get some work in with Pitt. So he took the initiative to get that work in, and then they ended up having all the guys out there to do even more work. So A.D. Mitchell putting in the work to be great, which is exactly what we're hoping for. Mentioned how, or actually did a stream yesterday and talked about how one of the things that was happening was, as the offense was getting a breather, or the receivers were getting a breather, A.D. Mitchell and Reggie Wayne, while they were getting their breather and getting their water, they were hanging out with Reggie Wayne, staying on his hip. That's exactly what we're looking for. Those are the types of things, like, Alec Pierce might be improving, and I think he will have an improvement this year. I think he is getting better from what I've seen so far, from what I've heard. Alec Pierce is looking really good these first few days of camp compared to last year and other years past. But A.D. Mitchell, man, A.D.'s just different. I really think A.D.'s a different kind of receiver, and I think he has a chance to be great in this league, and he's showing it right now. Now, he did say, quote, whatever he's doing, that's what I need to be doing. He said that about Michael Pittman Jr. when he was talking about how Pitt runs his routes, how he blocks, everything that he does. He wants to be doing what Pittman's doing, and likely because Pittman just got the bag, and one day A.D. Mitchell's going to want the bag, right? These guys, Justin Jefferson just got paid $35 million a year. If that's not motivation for a young kind of receiver, I don't know what is. Okay, but then he had another quote, said, talking about Anthony Richardson here, he said, quote, he's got the full package. It's up to us to fully support him, really, which is great. He knows he needs to do his part in the offense. He even knows that about the blocking. He was asked about blocking and said, quote, it would be selfish for me to not do it. If I didn't do it, I probably wouldn't be on the field. So he understands he needs to go out there, make an impact in the blocking game, also doing it receiving, right? You have Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson. Both of them can be dynamic rushing and can have a lot of open field as long as receivers are able to block their guys and keep their guys hemmed up down the field. So that's where we're at. Those are the press conferences. I went through that as quickly as I could. This is still going to end up being a pretty long one, but there were a lot to go through. There were a lot of press conferences on day one. I think there were 5 or 6 there on day two. There's some more from Saturday that we're going to go over, and hopefully we'll be able to get to that today. I'm going to try to get to that today, but we'll see what happens. We're definitely going to do a live stream later, though, when practice ends. We're going to go over practice and do all that. And then we'll have more press conferences to go over. We're going to have a lot of this stuff coming up, a lot of other content that I'm recording, starting to edit and try to push out to you guys as soon as I possibly can. We have a lot of stuff coming, so make sure you're subscribed. Have those notifications on. If you know anybody that loves Colts and would love some Colts content, go ahead, push this over to them, share this with them. I love talking about this during the live streams. I want you guys there so that we can talk in real time. That would be fantastic. So again, have those notifications turned on when you get subscribed, and keep on coming back, baby. I want to keep talking to you guys. Want to keep having your opinion. And there's a lot coming up. So appreciate you guys stopping by. Love you guys so much. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.